I got home around 11 p.m. Another late night at the office turned into an even later night at the bar. I was 4 drinks deep, tired, and ready to pass out as I stumbled through the doorway. I dropped onto the couch, reaching for my bag of joints, and sparked one up as I pulled YouTube up on my laptop. I was watching a luxury cruise tour, barely keeping my eyes open, when I heard the front door open. I sat up and turned my head just enough to see my roommate coming in. He hung his jacket in the closet without saying a word and walked slowly to his room. That was normal enough. We'd been living together for about 3 months, long enough for me to pick up on most of his habits. He rarely talked unless spoken to, which suited me fine. He kept his space clean and never caused any problems. I really couldn't complain. I went back to my video, and about 5 minutes later, I heard the shower in his room turn on. Again, nothing strange. At this point, I was watching bare-knuckle boxing highlights with my eyes half open, maybe a minute or two away from passing out. I woke up in darkness, my head pounding and my throat dry as hell. I sat up slowly, waiting for the grogginess to become manageable. I grabbed my phone and checked the time. Around 3:30 am, if I remember right. Starving, I got up and started walking toward the fridge. Then I noticed it. A soft but ever-present noise in the background. It took me a few seconds to recognize what it was. The shower. Memories of the night before began replaying in my head. Drinking at the bar, you bring home, laptop, couch. My roommate is coming home. The shower is turning on. I stood there for a while, trying to make sense of it. Maybe he went to bed and forgot to turn it off. I shook my head. No way. Maybe he slipped and fell. Realizing the implications, I rushed toward his room but found his bathroom door locked. I began pounding on it. "Hey man, are you all right?" No response. I considered kicking the door down but decided to call 911 before doing anything drastic. I took my phone out, preparing to dial, when I noticed an unread text from my roommate. "Hey man, I couldn't sleep, so I went over to my girlfriend's place. I'm not sure when I'll be back." I sent it 2 hours ago. I looked at the bathroom door, then back down at my phone. Everything about this was wrong. First, my roommate rarely texted me and certainly never told me he was going out. Second, I knew for a fact that he was single and had been for a while. And third, who the fuck was in the shower then? I tried calling him. No answer. Sent some texts, but no response. I walked over to his desk and saw his keys and wallet beside his laptop. My head started to spin, and I got out of there, went back into the living room, and turned on the lights. I paced around, trying to make sense of everything while trying to ignore the dreadful shower noise. Sometime later, I heard something vibrating on the kitchen counter. I moved towards it and saw it was a phone. My roommate's phone. Panic set in, and I immediately grabbed my keys and ran out of the apartment. I made my way down the hall and took the stairs to the lobby, but even that didn't seem far enough away. I headed over to the McDonald's across the street. I sat there for a while, considering calling the cops but feeling too nervous to do so. But even though there were hardly any people inside, the place began to feel suffocating, so I decided to leave, walking back onto the empty streets. Almost immediately, I felt like I was being watched. I looked up at my apartment. My gaze drifted up to the balcony, and I saw somebody standing there. A dark figure, stiff like a mannequin. But it wasn't one. If I looked closely, I could see it swaying slightly. I froze, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. It wasn't my roommate. It was too tall. In fact, it was too tall to be anyone I knew, its head nearly scraping the bottom of the balcony above. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't make out any details. The darkness and distance could have explained that, but there was something else. This thing seemed to have no details, composed only of unadulterated darkness. My gut instinct was to run, but the voice in my head told me that if I tried, this thing would follow me. I went back into the McDonald's instead, locking myself in the bathroom as I finally dialed 911. I told the operator that someone had broken into my place, but that I had gotten out without them noticing and that they were still in there. It was the story that most accurately represented the situation without making me sound crazy. The operator said they'd send someone over and told me to hang tight. I left the bathroom, waiting at the table closest to the exit, until I saw the red and blue lights cutting through the darkness. I went outside to meet the cops, looking up at the balcony to find it empty, though the door to the living room was left open. They bombarded me with questions that I found difficult to answer. Was the intruder armed? Did I know who it might be? What were their intentions? I told them I didn't know and that I couldn't figure it out, but they kept asking. I practically yelled at them to go up there and check it out for themselves. My terror must have convinced them because they finally took me seriously. They told me to wait by the entrance, so I entered the building. I was out there for a long time, growing increasingly anxious about what they would find. A few minutes later, the silence was broken by a single, muffled gunshot. My heart dropped into my stomach. 20 more minutes passed, and the officers hadn't come down. More officers arrived, adding to the chaos. Before I knew it, 4 more cop cars had pulled up, officers shouting over each other and into their radios, asking more questions I couldn't answer. The next few sequences were a blur, but I remembered the building being evacuated. Tenants were frightened and confused as they were ushered outside. I heard more scattered gunshots, some screaming, and other noises I couldn't make sense of. There were lapses in my memory after that, but I recall being pushed into the back of a police car. After being driven to the station, I was led into an interrogation room, where I found 2 nondescript men in suits waiting for me. They didn't introduce themselves and immediately started asking questions, each one more bizarre than the last. What company was your roommate employed by? What was the nature of his job? How many different people have been inside your apartment since your roommate moved in? Have you ever heard voices inside the apartment from midnight to 3 a.m.? Voices that did not belong to your roommate? Have you ever seen a circle of people standing outside the apartment from midnight to 3 a.m.? People that were exceptionally tall? And the most unsettling one. Have you ever seen somebody standing at the foot of your bed upon waking up between midnight and 3 a.m. East, only for them to disappear moments later? If so, do you remember what they looked like? Any distinct features? As they continued questioning me, my mind conjured up strange incidents that had happened since my roommate moved in, things I had written off as figments of my imagination. I did hear the voices, always coming from the room next to mine, where my roommate slept. It sounded like a young woman or a man with an extremely deep voice, always gibberish. And there was that one time when I went to the bathroom in the middle of the night. Half asleep, I didn't bother turning on the lights. But as my eyes adjusted to the dark, I could have sworn somebody was sitting on the toilet. Somebody is extremely tall. Of course, when I turned on the lights, nothing was there. I chalked it up to late-night drowsiness at the time and hadn't thought about it since. After giving them all the information I could, the suits spent a few minutes taking notes. Once they were done, they told me they'd be in touch before leaving. A cop came in a few minutes later and told me I couldn't return to the apartment. They would set me up in a nearby hotel until they got the situation under control and said that I should stay put until they called. What happened? I asked. What did you guys find up there? He stared at me for a long time, not as if he were deep in thought, but as if he held a deep aversion to what he was considering telling me. Eventually, he just shook his head. I don't know, he said. I really don't know. I nodded and tried to smile, though I'm sure it didn't come across well. It's the next day now, and I'm in the hotel. Of course, I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. The officer hasn't called me yet. When I search for information about the evacuation online, all I find are articles claiming it was due to a fire. Fucking fire. Update. I fell asleep and just woke up. It's 1 a.m. now, and I can hear the shower.